if you don't get it, then get the out of Philly.
Castellanos, high fly ball, way back.
In from this side, who else? That Michka.
Here's McConnell, can he get it off? Yes! Fumbles the football and the Eagles have it.
Jared McKinney making it rain.
Wayne Simmons wins it for Philadelphia.
Long drive, this game is over.
All right, we are back here today with another episode of Philly Talk. Man, what a special one. And I do admittedly have to apologize that even though it's a special occasion, this episode might be a little shorter just because, I don't know, I was having some issues with my computer. Don't know what's going on. I have to record this one on the laptop. So apologies if things sound different. Apologies if, this episode is short. But it's a special one because the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. What a game. Oh my gosh, man. I'm just super excited. This team, I've been saying that there's something different. And they're going all the way to the bowl. Talking about the game, man. It was close at first, but then it was straight BTA. My goodness, man. They just completely blew them out the waters. It wasn't anything like I was expecting, because the Commanders, they always give us such a tough run. It's funny because one of my friends before the game, like the day before, he asked me, he was like, how are you feeling going into this game? Because he's not much of a football fan, but he knows obviously I'm all things Philly. And I was saying to him, I'm like, Washington is always our hardest game a lot of times for some reason. Like, they're always putting up a challenge for us. We always seem to let them go off even when they're terrible. And this game, it was different. This game was just different. And you knew it was going to be different from the first play of our offensive drive when Saquon took that ball, broke all those tackles. They couldn't bring that man down. He took it all the way to the crib. And then he also got another touchdown, and they had the graphic where it was like 2 rushes, 2 touchdowns. Absolutely insane stuff from Saquon. And, you ask yourself, what was the difference from the last game against the Commanders? Well, it's the fact that we had a quarterback who was able to lead this team to properly capitalize on the turnovers created by the defense. I know Hurts was getting a lot of hate. Some people might have even seen the stuff I was saying last episode as hating. But really, I was just critiquing the fact that he's taking so many sacks. He's not getting the ball out, And what did he do this game? He literally improved upon that. He was avoiding sacks. He looked a lot more... he looked a lot more mobile. Even though he was dealing with that leg injury. I mean, they even said it. He had the brace on during, the practice reps. But then as soon as they went out for that first drive, they showed the difference that, he took the brace off. He looked a lot more mobile, so he was able to avoid a lot of sacks. He was throwing the ball away to avoid unnecessary loss of yards. And look at how much that helped us out. That's what I wanted to see. I had no issue with him not passing the ball as much because, we were still winning. But, my issue was just he's taking too many sacks. He's, not throwing the ball away. This is causing us to get knocked out of field goal position. This is causing us to lose a lot of yards and make things more difficult for the offense. And he improved upon that greatly in this game. You had Jalen, Saquon, and Will Shipley combined for 7 rushing touchdowns. Absolutely insane stuff. Jalen and Saquon both get the hat trick. Absolutely crazy stuff. Jalen also did it through the air. People were criticizing him for that. He goes and shows that he can throw it. He was missing a couple plays, but he was still being pretty efficient out there. You had Tom Brady getting upset about him not throwing certain balls, and I was upset a little bit too because it's I don't know. You gotta trust your receivers. AJ and Devontae on a couple of those balls looked like they could have won, especially AJ with some of his matchups. I was like, come on, you got to trust them there to just go up and get it, but Hurts kind of hesitated a lot of times, but other times he was getting that ball down to them, and it was absolutely amazing stuff to see. AJ, speaking of AJ, he started going at it with Marshawn Lattimore, and it was just so funny because it's Lattimore's been doing this his entire career down in the NFC South. He's been going at it with Mike Evans for their entire careers. And it's it was just funny to see it transfer over here. Now he's going at it with AJ. 2 of them are going at it. And, I saw a lot of people complaining about how come AJ didn't get a penalty in that like brawl that they had, which I admit AJ probably got away with it right there, but he did like back off to like make it seem like he wasn't the aggressor. But yeah, kind of got away with one there, but it was still funny to watch. And speaking of things that were funny to watch, how about that goal line sequence? That has to be one of the funniest things I've ever watched in football, man. Like oh my goodness, I just was laughing so hard watching that. Frankie Louvu penalized twice, the encroachment penalty. The refs bringing out a rule from like the I don't even remember how far back they said that rule is, but they were just like, hey, if you do it again, we have the right to award a score. And so many people were confused that they were like, how would you award a score? But it makes sense. You can only go half the distance of the goal line more until that ball is basically breaking the plane and it's basically a score. Like I think even commentary was like, man, can Cam Jurgens just take this ball and like put it over the line at this point? Like it was just so hilarious watching that sequence. Defense and offense completely balled out. One complaint you've heard from me, throughout, maybe not throughout this season as much, but definitely last season, the season before, and really a lot of other Eagles seasons that I wasn't making content for. One thing that's been a common complaint between my dad and I is just there's so many times where the defense is on, but the offense isn't, or the offense is on and defense isn't. And this game, it was what you wanted to see. The defense was working wonderfully. The offense was amazing. It was just one of the best games ever to watch. It was very reminiscent of that Vikings game because they just completely blew them out the waters. I literally asked my dad before the game, I forget where we were, but I looked at him like, what do you think we get today? Do we get, a nice calm game where we can, relax? Or do you think we're getting the typical heart attack game that these Eagles always seem to give us? And he was very confident. He was like, I think we're going to get the job done. I think they can even blow them out. My dad was fully confident, and they went out there and proved him right, man. Just so great to watch. Gotta say, even though we're rivals, I gotta show a lot of respect to that Washington team because what a run they also went on. JD is going to make things seriously tough on the East for years to come. I've seen some outliers, but for the most part, I haven't seen, too many Washington fans crying like we've seen other franchises, especially because I think to them, it's not necessarily that they had the happy to be there mindset, because they fought with grit in like every matchup they had. But it was more so just like they kind of understood that like this was a special run for them, and they aren't like too upset about losing because they technically weren't supposed to be there, but like they're very happy with the outcome of this team, and they are happy to know that like they still can make improvements. They still have the money to make improvements. They have new ownership that's willing to spend the money to make improvements to this team. So gotta shout out them. It was a fun matchup, at least for us Eagles fans. But, it was fun, electric stuff, man. And I got to give them a lot of props for their team. And, the grace they're showing in loss, very happy, to see that, especially, in previous years, not even just with the Eagles, but like other fan bases we've seen be a bit salty, which, I'm not saying you can't be mad at your team losing, but like, I don't know, man. Some people get too much into like the whining like section of loss, where it's like they can't even take a loss gracefully. They very much turn into what Drake is like right now with his whole UMG lawsuit, just really going out sad after a loss, so I've seen a couple of fan bases be like that after they lose. So I'm happy to see like a team, like again, there's always going to be outliers, but from what I've seen for the most part, they've been pretty humble about the loss and accepting that like what, just got to take that loss. And again, they're just happy to have new ownership that is willing to invest and improve them. And it's kind of ironic because the same ownership group that is doing that for the Commanders is also I believe part of the ownership group for the 76ers. And look at that dumpster fire. I'm just saying, man, I'm not salty about the Sixers. I'm not, It's just obviously a team that has hurt me year after year. You know, I'm not salty, but jokes aside, though, you know, we got a lot to cover as far as, you know, post game. Man, what a great game this was. That's one thing I got to cover before we start getting into the post game stuff, and you know, just talking about a couple other notes. Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson, man, what absolute legends and warriors from an absolute crazy performance from both men that they just pulled through. And you know, I'm just glad that the two of them can now get some rest. Got 2 weeks to rest up, man. Landon Dickerson, what a performance. This man was basically hobbling on one leg and was still going out there. Jurgens didn't start the game. They said he was available, but they weren't going to be starting him because he was having some back tightness. So Landon Dickerson slides into center, and he was doing pretty good. There was a couple mishaps because obviously, you know, it's like it was like Jalen and Jurgens to start the season. Remember how much they kind of struggled because Jalen was having to get used to Jurgens after playing with Kelsey for so many years. It's like it was that same thing where it's like, well, hey, I've been playing with Jurgens this whole season. You know, Dickerson's obviously going to be different with the snap count, with, you know, how he snaps it, you know. But, you know, Dickerson slid in. Even when he was hurting, he still went pretty much the whole half on one leg pulling through. You know, and they mentioned he used to play center in college. And I think that's something people often forget, is that Landon Dickerson was originally going to be the Jason Kelsey replacement. They drafted him because he was a center out of college, you know, and the difference, the thing that ended up happening was that, like, they didn't really have anyone to play left guard, and so, like, they slide him over. They're like, okay, we're going to slide him over to left guard. He's going to play there, and then when Kelsey retires, he's going to slide back over to center. Well, Kelsey ends up coming back for another year after that season, and they're like, well, Landon Dickerson's been so good at left guard, let's just draft another center in Cam Jurgens, this one hand selected by Kelsey, to be his eventual replacement since Dickerson's so good. And now look at it. Dickerson has that extension. He's been playing amazing at left guard. And now Jurgens easily filled in for Jason Kelsey. It's absolutely insane that he did that. But yeah, Jurgens comes in for, I believe it's the second half. And even with all that back tightness, he pulls through. Like I said, I'm just glad those guys can get some rest. And that's something I want to point out about the whole goal line thing. You know, it made sense. You know, I get it. You know, Frankie Louvu was trying his hardest to time that snap. He was trying to be like LeVar Arrington, Troy Polamalu, you know, really time that snap, you know. But I do understand the refs being like, hey, you know, if you do it again, you're going to get penalized because, you know, I mean, it's on both sides really, because it is a very difficult play in the sense of, like, you know, like the linemen talk about it, you know, like it is such a difficult play for them because you have to take quite the beating on those quarterback sneaks, you know. And I think on one of the plays, you literally see like Louvu's leg hit, I think, Jurgens like in the head and back, I think. And I think he kind of collided with Jalen on one of them. And, you know, obviously that's the risk the Eagles knew they were playing, putting Jurgens in there, you know, with his back tightness. But, like, I don't know, like, it kind of makes sense to me that, like, you got to prioritize the health, because you got to even prioritize Louvu's health, because, you know, doing that, he could potentially, you know, get a helmet-to-helmet hit and really injure himself, you know. So, like, I kind of understood it. But yeah, getting back to the main point, Cam Jurgens, Landon Dickerson, man, absolute warrior performance from the two of them. Glad they get to rest up. And speaking of rest, Brandon Graham attempting to make a comeback right before the Super Bowl. They can activate him from that injury reserve. Could you imagine if he makes a comeback and is able to play in that Super Bowl? I know a lot of people were like, hey, well, with the way a lot of these guys are playing, you know, should we really slot him in, especially coming back from an injury in the same year? Which I kind of agree with, but that's not to say he can't play a couple snaps, you know, when the other guys get tired, you know. Nolan Smith, he's been having a hell of a playoff run. He's been a playoff riser. Man, he's been going crazy. I believe he has the franchise record for most sacks in the playoffs, I think, or is it just in a single playoff run? I forget, but he has like 4 right now. He's been going crazy. But, like, hey, if he gets tired or Josh Sweat gets tired, who's to say Brandon Graham can't slot in? I started joking with my dad. I'm like, we're about to see Brandon Graham repeat history, get a strip sack on Mahomes, you know, and out of all the names, because, you know, Derek Barnett was a rookie, you know, out of all the names, we're going to watch Bryce Huff. I know he's not a rookie, but like, it's like the most random of names is going to recover that fumble for us, you know. So I was just joking around with my dad like that. But man, if Brandon Graham could make this comeback, that's going to be pretty insane. And I mentioned the quarterback. I got to say, I was talking to my dad about it. It has to be karma that I was low-key betting against the Chiefs. You guys heard me. I was like, you know, I was saying, you know, you can never count them out. But like, I wasn't too confident in the way they're playing. But man, look at what they do, you know. It's just what the Chiefs do. They're back in the bowl as well. We got to play them, you know. But at the same time, I don't know, like, I still feel, I'm obviously always going to be confident in my team, of course, you know, I'm never going to root against them, but, like, it's a tough matchup. We literally saw the Bills get out-coached. I mean, we literally saw them say, like, oh, they, like, pulled a lot of stuff out that they'd never seen before. It's like, it's a classic Andy Reid move. That's a classic Andy Reid move, to hide some of his playbook and save it for when it matters most, you know. And that was the big difference in that game, especially on that final drive. It's like they got Josh Allen confused because they ran a defense that he had never seen, but they knew that defense was going to be useful against what, you know, the Bills run, because they, you know, it's not to call them out too much, but it's like they were kind of being one-dimensional, you know, with their play calling a bit. So it's like the Chiefs were able to kind of predict that, you know, like what's a reference I can make? I don't know. It kind of reminds me of that scene from Remember the Titans, where the Coach Boone, he gets the math teacher to analyze all the different teams that they're going to be playing, like analyze their film, and like they get a breakdown of basically how many times they call a play, which every team has their tendencies, but like, I don't know, I think that's just what separated Kansas City in this championship game, was just the fact that, you know, Andy and his staff was able to outcoach McDermott and his staff, because it's like, I don't know, they saved some stuff so that other teams couldn't see it. They, you know, knew what to call because they knew what Buffalo likes to go to in certain situations. There were a couple calls that you just kind of wonder about, but I mean, that's been the story of the Chiefs all season, is the refs and stuff. But you know me, I'm not a guy that really likes to use that excuse. I mean, it's kind of clear at times that they do get some favors, you know, like if that's Mahomes taking that big hit on the last drive in place of Josh Allen, does he get that flag? Maybe. I mean, they literally threw a flag and then picked it up on that same play, which a lot of people were saying like, oh look, they threw a flag just in case Dalton Kincaid actually caught that, you know, to like somehow bring it back. People have been saying a lot of stuff, but really, getting into it, all this team can do is just play who's in front of them and know how to play when it matters most, you know. I obviously wish we could have gotten a different matchup for parity and entertainment's sake. You know, I think a lot of people would have enjoyed if it was a team other than Kansas City. But again, you can only play who's in front of you. And I'm not going to use the excuse of the refs. I'm not going to do anything. All I know is this team just needs to be disciplined. And they need to play like they want it more, you know. The energy, like I keep saying, just feels different with this team. And I believe in this team, you know. But they can't just slow down against a team that knows how to rise when it matters most. They just got to go out there and do what they've done this entire run. They got to limit turnovers. They got to capitalize on pivotal drives. They got to maintain the time of possession advantage. They got to run that damn ball. And they just got to bring a second Lombardi to the city of Philadelphia. I'm super excited. And of course, win or lose, I'm always going to be here to talk about it. But with all that being said, thank y'all for joining for this one. And I'll catch y'all in 2 weeks where we are going to be talking about the Super Bowl.